we have a new release for the Flutter and also the Dart language. So Flutter 3.27 and Dart 3.6 has just been released. And in this video, we are going to take a look at the changes that we have. So stay with me. Hi, this is Imaneo. Welcome to my channel. And as you know, in this channel, we talk about software engineering, we talk about Flutter, we talk about game development and these kind of things. So in this video, we are going to take a look at the releases that we have for Flutter and also the Dart language, Flutter 3.27 and Dart 3.6. So let's get started by the Flutter changes. So here we have the Flutter 3.27 article that is released in the Medium of Flutter, and I'm gonna go through it. So here we have some overview, and here the framework changes begin. So here we have the Cupertino updates, and as you know, in Flutter we have two major categories of the widgets, and you can open the widget catalog, and here we have Cupertino and also the material. So the point is that Cupertino is for the components that are related to iOS or macOS or Apple ecosystem. And for example, this is the action sheet, or this is the alert dialog, or for example, here we have context menu. You know, these are the components that are designed based on the Apple design system. So you can use them to develop your iOS style application, or you can use the material components that are based on the material design that is developed by the Google. And yeah, so these are the material components that are used in Android or in web or wherever you want. And yeah, so these are two major categories of the widgets that we have, Cupertino and material. And the point is that they are designed by Flutter. So I mean, there are Flutter code that implement the components. Flutter doesn't use the native widgets or native views, so it draws everything by itself. And the point is that you can have material design on your iOS phone or on your iPhone, or Cupertino design on your Android device, because it's Flutter, it draws everything from scratch. So the point is that, for example, you can have Cupertino design on the web. It doesn't matter where you run the Flutter code. You can use whatever widget that you want. And yeah, so here we have some update for the Cupertino widgets, for example, Cupertino checkbox, Cupertino radio, and this is the Cupertino sliding segment control. And here we have some navigation bar update, and I think here we have some button. Yeah, by the way, these are some changes that are related to the Cupertino. You can get deep into it if you want, but I'm gonna go ahead. And also we have some changes that are related to the material theming. So the point is that now we have card theme, dialog theme, tab bar theme, and you can wrap your, for example, card with the card theme to be able to customize the material properties of your card. And yeah, this is helpful. For example, you want to change the style of, for example, dialog style of a part of widget tree. Then you can wrap your widget tree with the dialog theme. Then you can mutate the style or the design of the widget tree that you want to change the dialog theme. And yeah, so here we have some update for the carousel view. So if you don't know what carousel view is, it's a new widget that is introduced by the material team. I think it was around 1 year ago that this feature is introduced. And it's a component that it's like this. You can have different images or different widgets that you can scroll them. I think here we have the animation. Yeah, so it is like this. For example, you can have a list of colors, or you can have items. You know, when you scroll, the size of the items change based on their position on the scroll. And yeah, it's a really cool feature. And the point is that they added the weighted feature. So for example, here it seems that the weight of this one and this one are the same, the left one and the right one, and the middle one has a weight of, for example, 8 times the corner ones. For example, it can be 1, 1, 8, something like that. And yeah, so I think it is this sample that is 1, 7, 1. And for example, you can set it 3, 2, 1, which is this one. So the first one takes 3 times of the space, the second one takes twice the space, and the last one takes one part of the, or one section of the space. And this is exactly like how the weight works on the row and column when you wrap your components with the expanded widget. And yeah, for example, here we have 7 and 1, which is this one. It means that if you split the space into 8 pieces or 8 sections, the left one takes 7 of them and the right one takes 1 of them. So this is how the weight works. And yeah, so the other one is more on material. So there are some changes on the material widgets. For example, in the segmented button, we have direction, and you can align it, for example, vertically. And there are some small changes that you can read about them. And yeah, so the next one is mixing row transitions. So the point is that you can customize the transition of the pages that are going to be opened and also the pages that are behind of the pages that are going to be opened. So I think they added a new way to animate the page that is behind. So this way you can match the animation for the new page and also the previous page. So this is an example. And yeah, so the next part is the text selection improvement. So as you know, in Flutter, you can wrap your widget tree using selection area to make it selectable. You know, by default, you cannot select a part of your text in Flutter. And to be able to use, for example, this gesture to drag and drop some part of the text and copy it, you need to wrap it using a selection area or selection text instead of your normal text. So this way you can be able to select the text. For example, in my FL chart sample, here you can just, for example, this is the text that we have here for the title. And as you see, I cannot select it when I click here, but we can change it to selection text, and when you hot reload, you see that you can select the text, and the same happens here. Or you can, for example, let me revert it back to this one, and we have chart holder. Yeah, for example, here we can wrap it with a selection area, and now all the texts inside the page are selectable. And as you see, for example, here you can wrap your widget tree using the selection area and have the selectable text, and then you can copy your selected text. And the point is that now you can shift click on a part of text to extend the selection to the point that you clicked. For example, now I'm dragging, and when I hold the shift and click here, the selection expands to this point. And the same happens in Flutter. So I'm on the newest changes, and for example, I can do this, and when I hold shift, it goes towards this point. So it is the new feature that is added to the Flutter. And yeah, so there are some properties that you can use. For example, you can use this method to clear the selection, or you can have global key to have access to the selection area dot selectable region to do the same. Yeah, so this is some updates that we had in the text selection. And then we have a cool feature in row and column. So I mean, it's not a big feature, it's just a small feature, but the point is that you can take a look at the issue that we had here. So it was a long conversation, and it was a controversial feature. You see, people just requested to have something like spacing in the column and in the row widgets. And the Flutter team had some arguments. For example, they said that we want to keep everything in Flutter separated, and the widgets can be composed together to do the complicated things. So that's why we cannot add the spacing feature to the row and column. The same happens on the padding. So the widgets doesn't have the padding property. For example, if you want to add the padding to a text, you have to wrap it with the padding. So the point is that we have single or small widgets or classes that they do only one thing perfectly, and you can compose them together. And that's why they thought that it's not a good idea to add the spacing, because it adds some complexity to the feature and it makes the development harder or more challenging when we want to add other features. And finally, they found a good solution to implement it without making the widget complex. So because it's a rule of Flutter, they want to keep the standalone widgets as simple as possible. So they do only one thing and they do it perfectly. So I mean, that's the philosophy behind the Flutter widgets, and that's why they didn't want to add it. And the issue was closed, and then it reopened, and People talked about it. You see here we have 86 hidden items. And finally, they decided to add it with a solution that doesn't make the row and column or flex widget complicated. And yeah, so now we have the spacing feature in the row and in the column. So instead of doing this, for example, before that you had to have this, for example, you had to have size box between the widgets that are in the row, or you could have a mapper or something like that that adds the size box between your widgets in the row or in the column. But now you can just add the spacing and it works perfectly fine. And yeah, so here we have the engine changes, and the point is that Impler is now the default rendering engine on the modern Android devices. And it's a big update because Impler is the new render engine that the Flutter team is developed, and it's gonna replace the Skia that was the previous one, and it has better performance on the devices, and it's developed and designed specifically for the Flutter. As you know, Skia is a general render engine that is used by different browsers, for example Firefox, Chrome, and also it was used in Flutter. It's a generalized render engine, that's why it is not a perfect option for specific needs. For example, Flutter has its own needs and its own features, and that's why it was not a perfect idea for using it in Flutter, and that's why they started to develop their own render engine that is called Impler for the Flutter. And if you want to know more about the Impler and rendering engines that we had, you can watch the video that I just published for the Google I/O 2024, and I just explained how it works. So simply we have Flutter and we have Impler, which is a wrapper around the graphic interfaces, for example Vulkan, OpenGL, or Metal for iOS. And then we have GPU, so it's how the connection works. And previously we had Skia here that the Flutter was using it. And now we have Impler, and it is like this now. So we have Impler that is a wrapper around different graphical interfaces. And the point is that now it is replaced for the iOS, because in iOS we don't have many type of different devices, but in Android we have a lot of different manufacturers, different brands that they develop their phone, their GPU, and that's why in Android it's more challenging to replace the Impler with Skia. And yet, so the devices that have Vulkan, they can get updated to the Impler, but the devices that have OpenGL, I think they need to wait until the Flutter team finishes the work on it. Yeah, as you see here, it says that now is the default rendering engine on the modern Android devices. And yeah, somewhere they mentioned that for OpenGL they should wait. Yeah, and finally they want to remove the Skia fallback. You know, at the moment we have Skia fallback for the old Android devices, and at some point we have to replace the Skia completely and remove it, and then we have the Impler. And yeah, so it was a good update. And also you can disable the Impler by this flag or adding this in the manifest if you think that it doesn't work for you. But they say that we believe that Impler's performance and fidelity are both high quality, but users are able to get back to the Skia by disabling the Impler. And yeah, but I don't suggest that. You can go ahead with the Impler, and if you found some bugs, it's perfect to report them to the Flutter team. This way we can help them to replace the Skia with the Impler. And here we have some improvements on the iOS devices. So it seems there was a bug that is explained here for the metal rendering surface, and they fixed that, and you can see the result. It should be more smooth. And yeah, so the point is that a user from the community with this name, Nop, they added the contribution to fix this issue that is in only iOS. And yeah, so now you can expect some improvement on your iOS device performance. Yeah, so this is the changes. You can take a look at the merge request here. And yeah, so the next one is something that is related to the gamut colors. So the point is that different devices use different color spaces. For example, Display P3 is for iOS devices, and we have sRGB that is for older devices. And yeah, so to explain you, I have this image. So suppose that the base color or gradient is the space that we have for colors. For example, here we have red, green, and blue. And the point is that, for example, sRGB is only this part of the shade. So it means that you have less colors with higher performance. So it is perfect for the old devices. And for example, with display P3 that is used by iOS, we have this much of the area. So it means that it supports more color, the range is wider, and the point is that the performance is less. For example, you cannot have P3 display on old devices. And this one, I think it is for Photoshop. It is called ProPhoto RGB. And as you see, it has a wide range of colors, and it is the bigger one, the orange triangle. And the point is that in image editing softwares, it's okay if you have less performance, because finally you will export your image and it's gonna be used everywhere. And yeah, so the point is that there we have a wide range of colors, and because the quality is much more important than the performance, because at the point you can just export the image and it's gonna be rendered. But for example, for old devices, the range is less because the performance is more important than the quality. And yeah, so now Flutter supports the display P3 color space, and it is for iOS devices. And as a result, we have some breaking changes. So I just checked it. It is not something that is complicated. And yeah, so for example, instead of from ARGB, you can use from, that you can pass the alpha, red, green, and blue. So you see that you can define a value that is between 0 and 1 instead of the hex values that is only from 1 to 255 and they are all integers. So here you can pass any number between 0 and 1. So it makes sure that the color has a wider range in some devices. And yeah, also for example, in opacity, instead of color.with opacity, you can use color.with values. By the way, these are just deprecated. You are not gonna get any error, but you will get some warnings. And yeah, so here we have some improvements on the web. So these are some small improvements. You can take a look at them. This is not something important that I can talk about. And yeah, here we have a big update on iOS that is using the Swift package manager. So the point is that Flutter is migrating to the Swift package manager. So I don't have much knowledge about iOS because I was an Android developer, Android native developer before I get into the Flutter. But it seems that in iOS we have CocoaPods, and it's gonna be replaced with the Swift package manager, which has some benefits. For example, we have more plugins in the Swift package manager and we can use them in Flutter. And also it has the simpler installation, because using the CocoaPods, you need to install the Ruby on your system and you need to do some installations outside of the Xcode and the Flutter environment. And when they switch it to the Swift package manager, it is already installed by the Xcode and you don't need to install any external dependencies or tools to use it. And here I have a comparison that I asked ChatGPT to help me. So for example, here it said that CocoaPods require Ruby to be installed, but on the other hand, the Swift package manager doesn't need anything. You can just work with it. And dependency resolution is faster in the Swift package manager, and it is slower on CocoaPods. And yeah, so there are some benefits that we will get when we use the Swift package manager, and yeah, I'm really happy about that. So the next one is about Android edge to edge. So from now on, the devices that is running on Android 15 Plus will use the edge to edge mode in the application. So for example, it was like this before that. You couldn't have the application on the edges of the screen, but now the default behavior is edge to edge. So it means that Flutter is gonna be rendered on every pixel that exists in the device. And it means that you need to take care of the safe area. As you know, we have a widget called safe area that prevents you to overlap on the device edges or device cutouts. So for example, some Apple devices has something here that cuts the screen, and you can put your widget in a safe area to shift it to the bottom to prevent it from overlapping on the cutout of the device or edges of the device. And yeah, the next update is that Android now supports the freeform This is a new feature that is added to Android devices. For example, when you have a tablet, you can have different windows, just like the typical windows that we have in macOS or Linux or Windows. And you can have the same on your Android tablet. You can have different views. You can do multitasks at the same time. For example, watching a movie and writing your to-do list, or reading the article that you have. And yeah, so now Flutter supports this behavior. Yeah, you see that, for example, here you have different windows for different tabs of the Google Chrome. The same thing that happens here. If I drag this tab, it gets separated, and I can put it somewhere else. And the same happens on the Android tablets, and Flutter supports that. And the point is that the safe area and the media query, they will be updated when you move your freeform or your window to the hardware cutouts, the points that are edges of the device, or the points that are cutted by the manufacturer. And yeah, so the other one is the Kotlin build script support, and it's also a big update because, as you know, in Android Gradle we had Groovy language, that is for the Gradle language, and later we could use Kotlin DSL, which is just Kotlin language that you can use for the Gradle. And the point is that Kotlin is statically typed, it is type safe, and it can do the compile time check, something we didn't have with Groovy. And also it has better IDE support if you are using Kotlin, and the performance is better. You see that it's the ChatGPT input for me. And also it's gone. The Kotlin is more popular, so it's a language that a lot of people are using it. And now the build.gradle can use .kts files in Flutter. And the point is that most of the apps need to do manually migrate, and the new created apps will use the Kotlin build files. And this part is related to the ecosystem. And yeah, so we have Flutter and Dart Package Ecosystem Summit, that are some meetups for the package ecosystems, and they will discuss about different things. They will suggest different features or new features, and these are the topics that are discussed in the last summit. And yeah, so I think it is helpful for the community because, as you know, Flutter itself is a small engine or a small framework that has a lot of packages, and you can install the packages. For example, you cannot directly use camera in Flutter. You can have a package for that or plugin for that. And this way we have a lot of packages that we can compose them together in Flutter. And that's why I think it is important to have a healthier community around the package and the plugins ecosystem. And yeah, the other one is a feature that I really like it. It's the download counts on PubDev. And yeah, so for example, there's something here that you can check the weekly download, and here you can check the monthly download, I think. And yeah, it's a 30 days download, and it is counted whenever someone runs Flutter pub-get. So it might be the CI/CD that you have, it might be the IDE that you are using, and yeah, it counts the downloads that you have. For example, for FL chart, yeah, here you can, for example, hover your mouse to see the trend or the download count of the package based on the weeks that you had in the last year. Yeah, and also the point is that in the score tab, as you remember, we had something called score, but now it is replaced by the downloads. So it's the count of the library or the package is downloaded in the past months. And yeah, so as you see here, I have some warnings. I need to fix them to have the better score or the pop points. And it is for the opacity that I already talked about it. It's for the new changes that we have for colors, but yeah, I will update it later. And yeah, so the other one is pub workspaces. So this is something that is helpful for the monorepo packages. So for example, in Flame, let me open the GitHub page. Yeah, in Flame, we have a lot of packages. For example, we have Flame 3D, Flame Audio, Flame Block, and a lot of packages that each of them have their own pubspec.yaml and the lib directory. And you know, all of them are separate packages that you can compose them together to build your game. And the challenge is that it's challenging to do the pub-get for all of them one by one, and that's why people are using Melos, that is for projects with multiple packages. So it tries to do the package resolution based on the dependencies and sync everything together at once. And now I see that the Dart team is working on the pub workspaces that does the same. For example, here you have 3 packages, and then you can define them in the main pubspec.file that you have. For example, you have this package, the other package, and this package. And this way it can do the dependency resolution at once. So it can see the dependencies and it can resolve all the dependencies that you are using. And here we have automated publishing for Flutter packages. So you can use the GitHub action to publish your package automatically. And here we have interactive media ads plugin. So there's a plugin that you can use. And yeah, also here we have the in-app purchase for iOS that it was StoreKit 1. StoreKit 1 is now deprecated, and we have StoreKit 2. And the in-app purchase StoreKit package that we have for Flutter now using the StoreKit 2. So it's an update for the in-app purchase in iOS and macOS. And now we have the DevTools and IDs. So we have an update in the DevTools. You can validate the iOS deep links in the DevTools. And here we have the new inspector. So it's a new style of showing the inspector. So you can turn it on by this toggle here. And yeah, also the WebAssembly is available in DevTools. I mean, it's not enabled by default, but you can do it in the experimental features. You can mark these checkboxes to have the WebAssembly build of the DevTools. So it should be faster. I can suggest you to do this to have better performance in the DevTools. And yeah, here we have some breaking changes on the material design tree. So some default colors are changed to the other ones. For example, on primary container is changed from primary 10 to primary 30. So it's some color changes. You can take a look at if your design is broken, you can realize with these changes, so you can revert it back. And here we see that they are deprecating the Objective-C for the iOS projects. So as you know, you can use this flag to create your iOS project with Objective-C because it is Swift by default, and it's gonna be removed in the next release. And here we have the deep link default flag that was false, and it's going to be changed to true by default. So if it is important for you, you can check out the migration guide here. And here it says that the SDKs in IDE, for example, IntelliJ or VS Code, the older SDKs are going to be deprecated to increase the development speed for sure. So make sure that your plugins are updated to the latest version. And yeah, so that's it for the Flutter. I will put a link into the description. You can take a look at it by yourself. And let's take a look at the Dart article. So it's Dart 3.6. So we have talked about the workspaces, and also we have talked about the download counts. And the point is that there's a new feature called digit separator, and I think we have it in most languages. For example, we have it in Kotlin. So the point is that you can add underscore to separate your digits to increase the readability. And you can also have 2 underscores to separate the bigger sections or bigger parts. And yeah, I think we are done, and I hope you like this video. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe to the channel, and if you like it, you can share it with your friends, and see you next time. Bye.